October the 8th, 1943, a cold wind sweeps across the airfields of eastern England. Dawn breaks pale and gray over endless rows of olive green bombers, the B-17 Flying Fortress, America's great weapon in the air war against Nazi Germany. Crewmen barely in their 20s pull on oxygen masks and heavy leather jackets. Mechanics check engines. Armorers load tons of bombs into the bellies of the planes. Over the loudspeakers, the target for today's mission is announced: Bremen 1. Of Germany's most vital industrial cities, home to Focke-Wulf aircraft factories, U-boat yards, and a network of anti-aircraft batteries ready to tear anything from the sky. The men exchange glances. No easy run. It's a deep penetration raid into the heart of Hitler's war machine, and every mile of it is defended by flak and fighters. Still, at 9 a.m., engines roar to life. More than 370 flying fortresses rise into the gray sky, each carrying 10 men who know they may never come back. The fortress in the sky, the B-17, wasn't just an airplane, it was a symbol. Its designers at Boeing called it a flying fortress for a reason. With heavy armor plating, 4 massive Wright Cyclone engines, and up to 13 machine guns, it could take hits that would destroy lesser planes. Crews trusted it like a living thing. They believed the fortress would bring them home even with half its tail gone or an engine on fire. Many times it did, but today's mission would test that faith. Among the hundreds of aircraft, one stands out: Hell's Angel's I, a veteran of more than a dozen missions. Her pilot, Captain John H. Morgan, knows Bremen all too well. The city's defenses are brutal radar, guided flak, nightmarish flares, and swarms of Luftwaffe fighters waiting just east of the Dutch border. Still, Morgan gives a nod to his co-pilot. "Let's take her home safe," he says, the same words every crew says before the long flight into hell. Crossing the coast, as the formation crosses the English Channel, the mood shifts from chatter to silence. The coastline of Europe appears below, gray dunes, winding rivers, and the dark forests of northern Germany. At 20,000 feet, the bombers form up into tight combat boxes, a formation meant to protect each other with overlapping gunfire. Gunners scan the skies, calling out contacts. The interphone crackles with tension. "Bandits, 3 o'clock high. Keep it tight, boys. Don't drift." Suddenly, black puffs of flak burst around them. The air smells of burnt cordite. The formation shakes as shockwaves hit aluminum skin. The Germans have them on radar. The nightmare has begun. Into the flak zone. Every minute over Germany feels like an hour. The sky becomes a storm of shrapnel. Some bursts are so close that fragments punch through the fuselage like nails through paper. Inside Hell's Angel's E, the waist gunner SGT Tom Hensley watches a neighboring fortress take a direct hit. Its wing folds and the aircraft spins down in flames. 10 parachutes blossom, but only a few open fully before disappearing into cloud. The radio operator murmurs, "God help them," but there's no time to grieve. More German guns open up as the formation approaches Bremen. The sky is filled with Messerschmitt Bf-109s and Focke-Wulf 190s climbing to attack. Fighters at 12 o'clock high. The first attack comes head on. Dozens of sleek German fighters dive straight toward the bombers at closing speeds of nearly 600 miles per hour. Their 20mm cannons blaze. Tracer rounds streak past the cockpit windows. The fortress gunners open up. 50 cals thunder in every direction. The nose gunner, PVT Jenkins, yells, "Got one." He's smoking as a 190 spirals down trailing flame. But the onslaught doesn't stop. Another fighter rakes Hell's Angel's I with cannon fire, blowing holes through the right wing and knocking out one engine. Flames erupt, licking toward the fuselage. Feather number 3, Morgan shouts, killing the engine and ordering the crew to grab extinguishers. The fire dies down, but the bomber now limps on 3 engines. They're not even over the target yet. Over Bremen. Below lies Bremen's sprawling factories, rail yards, and docks along the Weser River. The sky is so thick with flak it looks like a black cloud. The lead bombardier calls out, "Bombs away in 30 seconds." At that moment, 2 fortresses ahead explode in mid-air. Debris rains down through the formation. One wing slices past Hell's Angel's I, missing by mere feet. Morgan keeps his focus. Steady, steady. The bombardier toggles the switch, bomb bay doors open, and thousands of pounds of explosives tumble toward the city. Moments later, bright orange fireballs rise as the Focke-Wulf plant erupts in smoke. The target is hit, but the Germans hit back harder. the long way home. As the formation turns west, the Luftwaffe strikes again. Fighters attack from above and below, desperate to finish off the wounded fortresses. Tails hit, yells the rear gunner. Hydraulics are gone. The crew fights to stay level, blood freezing in the sub-zero air that howls through. Bullet holes. Captain Morgan refuses to drop out of formation. He knows stragglers are easy prey. Hold formation. We'll make it across the coast. For nearly an hour, the crippled bomber limps toward the North Sea, the navigator. His instruments are shattered, and radio contact is lost. They're alone now, a single fortress in a sky filled with death, a fight for survival. At 18,000 feet, another German fighter makes one last pass. Tracers tear through the fuselage, killing the ball turret gunner instantly. The rest of the crew screams in rage and grief, but the mission must go on. The left wing is leaking fuel. The number 2 engine begins to cough. Morgan knows they won't make it back to base. He sets a course for the nearest Allied airstrip on the English coast if they can just make the water. As they cross the coastline, the crew finally exhales. One gunner whispers a prayer. They've been in the air for over 8 hours, half of it under fire. The landing. With 2 engines out and hydraulics failing, Morgan lines up for an emergency landing at Raththorpe Abbots. Ambulances wait at the edge of the runway. The fortress touches down hard, tires screeching. The right landing gear collapses, sending the bomber skidding off the runway in a shower of sparks. But she stays together, battered, scorched, and bleeding oil. When the plane stops there, as silence. Then laughter, tears, and disbelief. They made it. Of 10 men, 7 are wounded, 1 dead, but the fortress brought them home. As ground crews swarm the Sarpe-Proppenton crews, as ground crews form the Papleton crews from the Papleton. Wreck. One mechanic mutters, "I don't know how she stayed in the air." Morgan just pats the fuselage and says quietly, "Because she's a flying fortress, the cost." That day, 30 bombers were lost, more than 300 men killed or missing. It was one of the bloodiest missions of 1943, yet the raid succeeded. The Focke-Wulf plant was heavily damaged, delaying German fighter production for months. The air war over Europe was brutal arithmetic. Losses traded for progress. Every target hit brought the Allies one step closer to victory, but at a terrible human cost. In the months to come, Bremen would be bombed again and again until its war industry was reduced to rubble. But for the men who flew that first deep raid, it was more than a mission. It was survival against impossible odds. The Flying Fortress Legacy. The B-17 earned its legend that day. Crews returned with stories of bombers flying home with half a wing missing, tails shredded, and engines dead. Photos showed fortresses riddled with hundreds of bullet holes, yet still airborne. Each scar told a story of teamwork, courage, and sacrifice. By war's end, over 12,000 B-17s had been built. More than 4,700 were lost in combat. Tens of thousands of airmen never came back from those skies, but their endurance and their machines broke the back of Nazi Germany's war industry. The B-17 wasn't the fastest or the biggest, but it was the one that kept flying. It became the heart of the U.S. 8th Air Force, a flying anvil that carried democracy's hopes across the clouds of Europe. Today, a few restored, B-17s still thunder through the skies at air shows, mighty relics of a time when the world's fate was fought in the cold, thin air miles above the earth. Their 4 Wright Cyclone engines rumble like distant thunder, echoing the same sound that once shook the heavens over Germany. Crowds look up in awe as the great silver wings glide overhead, sunlight flashing off their aluminum skin. But for those who were there, the few remaining veterans who still come to watch, that sound is something far deeper. It is not just noise, it is memory. They remember the friends who never made it back. They remember the frozen gun barrels, the smell of oil and cordite, to endless drone of engines during missions that stretch for hours into enemy territory. They remember looking out their plexiglass windows and seeing another fortress suddenly vanish in a blossom of fire. They remember the silence that followed and the empty bunks in the barracks that night. And they remember the sight of the white cliffs of Dover rising through the mist, a promise that they had survived one more day, one more mission, one more miracle. When you watch one of those old bombers fly today, remember what it stands for. Not just steel, rivets, and engines, but the unbreakable will of ordinary men who faced death with every takeoff and still climbed aboard. They were farm boys, factory workers, students, sons, and brothers, united by duty and bound by courage. Each mission was a gamble against impossible odds, and yet they went again and again because they believed the cost was worth paying. So when you hear that deep rhythmic growl in the sky, look up. That's not just a plane, it's history in motion, a living echo of the generation that refused to give up. The B-17 still flies, not as a weapon of war, but as a monument to bravery, to brotherhood, and to the heavy price of peace.